Hello. In this video, I'll show you how to build several different memory games using the AVE Publishing interactivity tools. We'll start out building a simple memory game, then we'll continually add more functionality to the game. In this file, I have a horizontal InDesign document with a background image. You begin building a memory game by creating a frame for the interactivity. You then choose the memory game in the AVE interactivity panel. You must first add the images you want to use for the memory game. I'll start by adding these 3 images. This is what my cards look like. In the Game's Level section, you define how players will interact with the game. The initial duration rate is the amount of time a player will see the cards face up before the game begins. The game duration rate is the amount of time the player has to play the game. If you set both of these values to 0, the player never sees the cards face up and has unlimited time to finish the game. I'll set both of these values to 0. The number of sets defines how many pairs of cards will be in the game. The cards per set defines how many cards will be in that set. For example, 3 sets, having 2 cards per set, will display 6 cards. In the Render section, I can choose a color for the front and back of the card. This is especially useful if you use PNGs that have transparency. You can also pick an image for the back of the card. This is what the back of my card looks like. The card ratio defines how the card will fit into the card frame. For my card to fit correctly, I need to define this as 0.7. The X and the Y value for the deck define where the deck of cards will appear in the frame. 0.5 will render the deck in the center of the frame. 0.0 will render them in the top left, and 1 will render the deck at the bottom right. This is how the stack of cards looks rendered in the center of the frame. You can also create a Start button to begin the game. You select the button image and define it as a button in the interactivity panel. You can use Frame using Frame Picker and choose the memory frame. For the action, you can pick Start. Once you're done generating the preview, you can test your memory game in My Kiosk. Notice how the deck appears in the center of the frame. Once you click Start, the game begins, and it does not show you the card faces. There is no time limit, so you can play until you have found all of the matches. The Start button also acts as a reset and start as well. In this next example, we will make 3 levels of the game, buttons that lead you to them, and we will show the cards to the player for a duration of time before the game starts. In the first game level, I will set the initial duration rate to 500 milliseconds. How many sets and cards per set there are determine the duration rate. For example, setting this value to 500 means that for every card that is rendered, a half of a second will be added to the time the player sees the cards. Therefore, 6 cards means 3 seconds. I'll add a second game and set the initial duration rate to 400. I'll also set the game duration rate to 0. I'll increase the number of sets to 5. Finally, I'll add a third game and set the initial duration rate to 300. I'll also set the game duration rate to 0, and I'll increase the number of sets to 7. Now you can make buttons that access each game. Each button needs to have 2 actions. The first action changes the game level, and the second action starts the game. First, you select the image, create a tap action, tell frame using Frame Picker, and select the image again, and then change the game level. The first button will remain set to 1. Next, you create a second tap action. Use Frame Picker, select the frame, and set the action to start. I'll now apply both those actions to the other 2 buttons, making sure to set the game level of the normal button to 2 and the hard button to 3. Once you're done generating the preview, you can test your multi-level memory game in my kiosk. When you click on the Easy button, the card faces show for 3 seconds, and then you can play the game. Each game has been set to show the card faces. If you choose Normal, there are 10 cards in the game, and if you choose Hard, the game has 14 cards. In this next example, we will add timing to the games so that the player has a limited amount of time to finish each game. We'll also add a progress bar so that the user knows how much time they have left. Finally, we will add an action on lose that resets the game. First, you need to select the memory frame. The game duration is where you enter the time in milliseconds. I'll set the first game to 1200, the second game to 1100, and the third game to 1000. At the bottom of the Memory Enrichment panel, you can set actions for finished, lose, and save score. If a player loses the game because they did not finish in time, we want the game to reset. For the action lose, you can pick the maze frame and set the action to start. This will reset the game if the time runs out. Next, you can build a progress bar. These are the images I have defined for a progress bar. Each image is saved as a separate PNG file. Notice how the first image is a full bar and the last image displays no yellow bar at all. I have placed the first bar on the page in InDesign. The first thing you need to do is name this bar chronometer in the Layers panel. You don't actually name the layer, you name the object itself. Secondly, you need to define the progress bar as an animation in the Interactivity panel. With the progress bar selected, choose Animation as the enrichment. Next, you load all of the files for the progress bar animation. Finally, you need to select the memory enrichment and add the chronometer feature. Next to chronometer, select Click and choose a frame. You can then select the chronometer you just built. Once you're done generating the preview, you can test your progress bar in my kiosk. When you pick a game, you are shown the card faces. Then the timed game begins. Notice how the progress bar animation plays according to the time we set for the game. If the time runs out before the game is finished, the game automatically resets. When you choose harder levels, you have less time to finish the game. In this next example, we will add the score feature to the game. The score will be recorded as the player plays the game. And once they are finished playing, they will be prompted to save their name. The first thing you need to do is make a frame for the score. Then name this Score in the Layers panel. Next, you need to define the look you want for the number. You can put in a sample number and style it however you like. I'll make the font size bigger, center the type, and pick American Typewriter as the font. To keep this same styling in the game, you need to define this as a paragraph style. Select the text and create a new paragraph style. I'll name my paragraph style Score. Then apply the paragraph style and delete whatever you had in the frame. You can then define this frame as the score frame by selecting the memory enrichment and clicking on Click and choose a frame to the right of Score. Then you can choose the score frame you just defined. Finally, we'll add another finished action that prompts the user to save their name and score. In the Actions group list, for the actions on Finish, we'll define this as Save Score by first choosing the memory game. Once you're done generating the preview, you can test your score box in My Kiosk. Notice that the score is being recorded as you play the game. You can see it is displayed centered and in the correct font defined in the paragraph style that was applied to it. When I finish the game, I am prompted to save my name and my score is recorded. In this last example, we will add survival mode to the game and also set the score to reset if you lose. All of the games we have previously made have been set to simple mode. In survival mode, you can set up one game to continuously get harder. Essentially, you need to define how many cards, how long they will be previewed, and how long they have to finish the game at the start. Then you can increase the max values to define how much harder that game will get. Finishing one game automatically launches the next survival game. In the game's level list, you can change the game from simple to survival. First, you set the iterations, which is the number of games that can be played. There are 10 iterations currently set. Initially, the cards will be shown 0.5 seconds for each card, but at the hardest level, they will only be shown for 0.3 seconds. The game duration begins at 1,000, but at the hardest level, it is only set to 700. The initial card sets are defined as 3, but at the hardest level, there will be 7 sets. For the harder levels, I've increased the number of sets and cards per set, and I've decreased the duration to make the games progressively harder. Finally, I want the score to reset if the game is lost. For the actions on Save Score, I'll define this as Reset. Once you're done generating the preview, you can test the survival mode. When you beat a game, it becomes progressively harder. If you lose a game, you will be prompted to save your score, and the score will reset. I hope this video has opened up your imagination to the endless fun and interactive ways you can set up the memory game. Have fun exploring memory in the AVE digital publishing platform. Thanks for watching.